Glad to get to see you. I wanted to have this chance to tell you thank you. Thank you for encouraging me. Every time we are together in Bible class, you encourage me so much. And even though we're not getting to be together right now, you're still encouraging me. Because you see, when you love God and you live for Him, you make a difference in the life of the people around you. Let me show you what I mean. Just this week, I saw a picture of one of you. And because you love God, you were worshiping with your family. And you were praying with your family. But that had an impact on other people. Because while you were praying, you chose to reach down and grab the hands of your sisters, which encouraged your sisters. Your mom looked over and saw you, and that encouraged your mother. You're making a difference in the life of the people around you. Well, then I saw the picture, and I was encouraged because of the choices that you are making to live for God. And then I told my husband, look at how your influence is just pouring out to all the people around you, making a difference in their lives. And I want to tell you, thank you for loving God and living your life for Him and making a difference in my life and in all the people around, the lives of the people all around you. Thank you. You know, that's just like the life of Joseph that we've been studying about. He made a difference in the lives of the people around him because he loved God and chose to live for Him. You guys remember? Joseph had been sold by his brothers, and he had been taken down to Egypt where he'd been sold as a slave. And he lived pretty well in the house of Potiphar until Mrs. Potiphar lied about him, and he was put in prison for it. Well, the keeper of the prison saw that God was with Joseph, and he put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners. Now, the king's prisoners were the ones that were put in this prison. And two of the king's court, the chief baker and the chief cupbearer, had made Pharaoh, the king, mad, and he put them in jail, in this prison. Well, Joseph was assigned to attend to him. It'd been for a while. Well, one day he went in and he said, "Why do you guys look so sad?" And they said, "We've had a dream, and there's nobody here to tell us what our dream means." Here's Joseph in a prison for something he didn't do. Maybe this was his chance to say, "I'll tell you what your dreams mean if you get me out of here." But he didn't. He loved God, and he chose to live for God. He said, "The interpretations of dreams belong to God." So they told Joseph about their dream. The cupbearer said, "I saw a vine with 3 clusters of grapes and Pharaoh's cup. I took the grapes and I squeezed the juice into the cup, and then I handed it to Pharaoh." Joseph told him, he said, "Well, that means that in 3 days, you will be reinstated as Pharaoh's cupbearer." The baker said, "Well, I had a dream too. 3 baskets, and on the uppermost basket was bread, and the birds were eating out of that basket." Joseph said, "Well, that means that in 3 days, you won't be reinstated. You're going to be killed." And it came to pass exactly as God had told Joseph. In 3 days, it was Pharaoh's birthday. And he had the cupbearer reinstated. But before the cupbearer left the prison, Joseph had told him, "Please remember me to Pharaoh. I was stolen out of the land of the Hebrews, and I've done nothing here to deserve to be in this prison pit." But he forgot him. For 2 whole years, he forgot him. Until Pharaoh had a dream. And Pharaoh, this dream bothered him. In fact, he had 2 dreams. He called all the magicians and all the wise men in Egypt together and told them their dream and said, "Tell me what it means," but no one could. Then the cupbearer remembered Joseph, and he said, Pharaoh said, "Go bring him to me." So they changed his clothes and he shaved, and they brought him to Pharaoh. And this is what Pharaoh said to him. Pharaoh said, "I've had a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. I have heard that I have heard it said of you that if you hear a dream, you can interpret it." Here's Joseph. He's a prisoner, and he'd like to get out of this prison pit. Maybe this is his way out. Maybe he can say, "Oh, great Pharaoh, I know what your dreams mean." But Joseph loves God and chooses to live for God. And he's going to make a difference in the life of the people around him. Here's what he says to Pharaoh. "It's not in me, Pharaoh. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. God will tell him what your dreams mean." So Pharaoh told Joseph about his dreams. He said, "I dreamed that there were 7 fat cows coming up out of the Nile and grazing. And then they were followed by 7 skinny cows, like I've never seen in Egypt before. Oh, it bothered me and I woke up. I went to sleep, had another dream. 7 ears of corn on one stalk, and then followed by 7 skinny ones." Joseph said, "God has shown to Pharaoh what he is about to do." He didn't take credit for himself. He gave all the credit to God. And he says, because you've had 2 dreams, it means God has decided that this is going to happen, and it's going to happen quickly. The 7 fat cows and the 7 healthy ears of corn are 7 years of plenty in the land of Egypt, followed by the 7 skinny cows and the 7 sick-looking ears of corn. That will be 7 years of famine. And he said, "Pharaoh, you should appoint a man who is discerning and wise over the land of Egypt, and as helpers, overseers to help gather the grain during the good 7 years that are to come." And Pharaoh says to him, "Since God has shown you all this, there is no one more wise and discerning than you are. You, Joseph, shall be over my house, all my people. Order them as you command. Only in regards to the throne will I be greater to you." Joseph, this prisoner, is now going to be second to the Pharaoh. And he took off his ring, his signet ring, which showed that power and the authority of Pharaoh. And Pharaoh put it on Joseph's hand. He put a beautiful linen clothes on him, and he put a gold chain around his neck. He put him in a chariot, the second chariot. I guess the first chariot probably would have been for Pharaoh. But he wanted the people around to know, I want you to follow the commands of this man, Joseph. And not only did he put him in the chariot, he heralded him. He had people holler out as he rode by, "Bow the knee." Everyone knew they were to obey Joseph. He was the governor of the land. It happened just like God had told Joseph it would. There was 7 years of plenty. There was so much grain. Joseph gathered grain into every city. He told people, "You have 5 parts. You bring 1 of all that you have gathered into the city. 4 you can eat and use as grain and seed, but 1 you bring to the city." So all the fields around a city, the farmers brought 1/5 of everything they grew to be stored. There was so much food. There was so much grain. They stopped counting it. They couldn't measure it. There was so much. And it's a good thing there was. Because, if you remember, after the 7 years of plenty, there was 7 years of famine. And it was severe, the Bible tells us. There wasn't any bread. There wasn't any food. The people came to Pharaoh and he said, go ask Joseph. And so they brought their money and they bought grain from Joseph. Well, when their money was all gone, they brought their livestock and they sold that to Joseph. And he gave them the grain. Well, when that was all gone, they came back and they said, all we have left is ourselves and our land. We'll be your servants. Take our land. Just give us grain. And he did. By doing that, Joseph made Pharaoh such a wealthy man. He had all the land and all the money and all the people in all of Egypt. Now, the Bible tells us that the famine wasn't just in Egypt. It was all over the earth. It was in Canaan where Joseph's family was, and they were hungry. Daddy Jacob saw the food was gone. He said, you leave Benjamin here, but the rest of you? Why are you sitting around here looking at each other? I hear there's bread down in Egypt. Go buy us some. So they get their donkeys and they get their money and they go to Egypt. So when they get to Egypt, who do they have to buy food from, grain from? Joseph. Joseph saw them coming and he knew who they were, but they didn't know who he was. We realize it had been years and Joseph looked different. Joseph was an Egyptian official. He dressed like them. He talked like them. But his brothers, they were dressed like shepherds, and they spoke Hebrew. When Joseph saw them, he spoke roughly to them. He said, you're spies. You've come to see how bad the land is. They said, no, we're not. We've just come to buy grain. We're all brothers of one father. We've all just come from Canaan. We're just here to buy grain. He said, no. You're spies. You want to see how bad the land is. And they said, no, we're honest men. We've just come here to buy grain for our families. Joseph heard them talking. He knew who they were. Oh, I can't imagine. I'm sure he wanted to just run up and hug them, but he didn't. He said, you're spies, and I'm going to give you a test. You leave one of your brothers here, and the rest of you can take the grain and go home. But you bring me the youngest brother you told me about back here. And in fact, I'm not even going to see you again if you don't. Oh. Those brothers, they said, what have we done? This is all happening to us because of what we did to Joseph. We heard him in his distress and we didn't listen. That's why all this is happening, because here Joseph told him, I'm not going to give you grain unless you bring Benjamin back. And they knew that their father was not going to let Benjamin come back with them. He said, one of you stays with me. And he bound Simeon. He took Simeon and he bound him in front of all of them. And they left to go back to Canaan. On their way, they stopped that night. And to feed the donkeys, they opened up one of the sacks and they saw their money. You think we stole the grain? Oh no, this was our test to find out if we were honest men. Oh no. So they went on to Daddy Jacob and they told him about everything that had happened, about how they had opened their sacks and they had found the grain or found the money in their grain sacks. Oh, Jacob, when they told him the story, he said, he was so sad. They said, we can't even go back and buy grain unless we bring Benjamin. He said, no way. Look, he said, Simeon is gone. And now you want to take Benjamin and one of my children is no more? Joseph. He said, no, I am not going to let you take Benjamin. No. Well, after a while, he didn't have a choice. all their food was gone. At first, Reuben came to him and said, Dad, we have to go get some more. And he said, no, you are not taking Benjamin. And then Judah came to him later and said, we have to take Benjamin or he won't see us. And if I don't bring him back to you, Father, Daddy Jacob, you let the blame be on me. Jacob said, okay, take Benjamin, but take 2 times the money, all the money that was in your sacks. All the money that you originally took. Take some more money to buy more grain. And you take gifts for this man. You take nuts, the best things from Canaan. You take nuts and you take honey and you take spices and lotions. Maybe he'll think it was an oversight, a mistake, that you came back with your money. So they left and they took him. They took Benjamin. So they get back to Egypt. And Joseph sees them. Joseph sees them. And he tells his steward, his servant over his house, he says, bring them in to my house. I want to have lunch with them. As they're going, they thought, why are we being taken to his house? They're going to attack us. It's because of the money. They think we stole it. They don't think we're honest men. They came to the house. They didn't even make it inside. They talked to the steward at the door and they said, we didn't do this. We did not take the money. And the steward says, I know. I'm the one that got your money. I know. Come on inside. Don't be afraid. They got inside. They gave him some water to wash their feet, and they fed their donkeys. They got everything ready to give as a gift to Joseph, to the governor. And Joseph comes out. He sees them and he says, is this your brother? And they said, yes. He said, is your father okay? Yes. He had to leave the room. He started to cry. He was overwhelmed. He had to leave the room. He went to his room and he washed his face and he came back and he said, let's eat. Let's eat. So they set him at his table with his food, and from his own table he served his brothers. But something odd had happened. He seated his brothers in order of their birth. He had brought Simeon out to them, and there they were, seated in order: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin. How would he have known our birth order? That was odd. But then he gave them each a portion of food. But he gave Benjamin 5 portions. Another test. Do you guys remember what had made these brothers mad to begin with? Do you remember how their father had given Joseph a very special gift and not given them a coat of many colors? Remember how they got jealous? Well, here's the test. Joseph wanted to see if when he gave Benjamin 5 portions of food, what they would do. But the Bible says they ate and they were merry with him. Maybe their hearts had changed. So the next morning, they load up their donkeys, and Joseph said, give them as much grain as they can carry. And secretly, he said, put their money, all their money, back in their bags. And in Benjamin's sack, put my own silver cup. So the men took off, not knowing anything about it. They'd gone a short way, and Joseph told his steward, go get them. So the steward goes, and he comes up to him, and he says, why would you repay evil when you have been treated good? They said, what are you talking about? We brought back the money. And he said, no, you stole the cup. We didn't steal the cup. They were so sure that the cup would not be found in their things, that they said, look, whoever you find the cup, whoever has it, they should be killed. And the rest of us would be your servants if you find the cup, the governor's cup. So they start opening their sacks, oldest to youngest. When they get to Benjamin, they open their sack and they find Joseph's cup. They find the governor's cup. They're shocked. And they said, look, they're shocked. And they said to the steward, to Joseph's steward, they said, take me and let the boy go. Let the rest of them go. And he says, no, only the one who was guilty. Only the one who took the cup. And they all went back to Joseph. They passed that test. They didn't abandon Benjamin. They all went back to Joseph and they said, look, we didn't do this. We didn't do this. We don't know. We don't know what it is. And when Joseph saw them, he was overwhelmed. He was so overwhelmed because he knew that their hearts had changed. When they came back, they said, we didn't do this. And Judah came to Joseph and said, please let them all go. I will stay as your servant. Don't keep Benjamin. If you keep Benjamin, it will kill our father. Keep me instead. These don't sound like the same men that had sold Joseph, that hated him so much they threw him in a pit to kill him. And now he knew that their hearts were different. He was overwhelmed and he started crying. He said, get everybody out, everybody out. It was just he, Joseph, and his brothers in the room. And he started crying and he looked at him and he said, I am Joseph. I am your brother that you sold. And here's what he said. He was so happy. He said, you meant it for evil. Here's what he said. I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. Do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. The famine has been in the land for 2 years, and there's still 5 years to come. God has sent me here before you to preserve you and keep alive many survivors. So it is not you who sent me here, but God. Hurry, go back to Canaan and get our father and bring him here so he could take care of his father and all their children and their households. They all cried and they hugged. And it says he hugged Benjamin and they cried. Don't you know that was wonderful? He cried so loud that the household heard it. Pharaoh's household heard about it. Pharaoh was so glad. He said, Joseph, I am so pleased. You take wagons and you go get your father. Go get your father and his wives and bring them, everyone's wives and their children, and you bring them here so I can take care of them. So they did. They left and went and got Jacob. Oh, don't you know Jacob was excited? He was so happy. He said, to know my son is alive, I can die because I'm a happy man. So Jacob and all their wives and their children and all their animals in their household, 70 of them, left Canaan and they came to Egypt. On the way, they stopped at Beersheba, and God met Jacob there in a dream. And he said, I'm going to go with you down to Egypt. Don't be afraid to go. When they got there, they sent word ahead to Joseph, and Joseph got in his chariot and went and met his father. And it said that they fell on each other's necks and they cried. They were so happy. I bet it had been a wonderful thing to just see each other's face. And then Joseph took his father and his brothers and presented them to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said, well, to his brothers, what's your occupation? He said, we're shepherds. Well, Joseph had told him to say that so that they would live separate from the Egyptians, because the Egyptians didn't like shepherds. And so Pharaoh said, I give you the best land of Egypt. I give you Goshen. You can all go live there together. And to his father, Daddy Jacob, Pharaoh asked, how old are you? He said, I'm 130. And then Pharaoh, who was the ruler and in a higher position of authority, accepted a blessing from a visitor, Daddy Jacob. Daddy Jacob blessed Pharaoh, because you see, probably even Pharaoh realized the God of Joseph, who loved God and lived for him, was with his father. So Daddy Jacob lived there in Egypt for 17 years. And when he was ill, probably about to die, he had Joseph bring his sons to him, Ephraim and Manasseh. And like fathers do, they bless their children. Well, they put their hands on their children and give them a blessing. Now, it was their custom that the right hand would give the greater blessing. So you would bring the older child to receive the oldest blessing. But when Joseph brought his two sons to his father crossed his arms, giving the right hand the greater blessing to the younger child, Ephraim. Joseph said, no. And Daddy Jacob said, I know, but the younger will be greater than the older. And then Daddy Jacob did die at the age of 147. But before he did, he made his sons promise him not to bury him in Egypt, to carry his bones back to Canaan. And Joseph and his brothers, and a great funeral procession, that's exactly what they did. There were chariots and horsemen, and the elders of Egypt, and the elders of Pharaoh's house. And all of this procession took him, and they buried the bones of Daddy Jacob with his grandfather Abraham, his grandmother Sarah, his mother and his father Isaac and Rebekah, and his beloved wife Leah. And then they all went back to Egypt to live. You know, when you look at this story, Joseph loved God and he lived for God. And because of it, he influenced so many lives. He saved so many lives. I love watching how you guys influence so many lives, because I know that you love God and you're choosing to live for him. You know, in Matthew, Jesus tells us what that will look like when we choose to live for God. He says in Matthew 5, verse 14, it's like you are the light of the world. It's like a city set on a hill that cannot be hidden. In 16, it's like a light shines before others so that they will see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. I love watching you choose to live for God. I want to show you what that looks like. Let me show you. You make a difference in the lives around you. When Bryce and Alana and Camden and Maddie choose to live for God, they make a difference in the lives around them. When Michaela and Ethan and Abby and Nora and Bailey choose to live for God, they make a difference in the lives of the people around them. When Mason and Riley and Trulia and Shelby and Maya and Colton choose to live for God, they make a difference in the lives of the people around them. What about McKinley and Chandler and Easton? They make a difference in the lives of the people around them. What about Chloe and Ella and Amelia and Mercy and Jerome and Tabitha and Caleb and Madison and Judah and Sophia? You make a difference in the lives of the people around you because you're choosing to live for God. How about Jordan and Brenna and Madeline and Addie and Sydney and Gabby and Allie? You guys are shining your light, making a difference in the light of the life of the people around you. Just like Ethan and Hunter and Dakota and Hudson and Tilly and Addie and Addison and Tyler and Weston and Carrington. You guys love God, and I love watching you make choices in your life. Choices maybe as small as holding the hands of your sisters around you to encourage them in their lives. You're making a difference in the lives of the people around you. And I want to tell you, thank you. I can't wait to be with you again.